All right. Well, again, thank you for being here this afternoon for the Digging Deeper session, talking about program guides and candidate supports for CalTPA and CalAPA. We just launched all the materials for version 1 for CalTPA, and and we are getting ready to launch the program guide as well to be able to support programs. And then also it is publicly available on the website. So anything within it is also shareable with candidates to be able to support them as they journey through their performance assessment. We can go ahead and take a look at the next slide. So we're here for both CalTPA and CalAPA. Within CalTPA, there are several different umbrellas. There are the multiple subjects, single subjects, and world language. There is PK3 and the education specialist, all 5 areas of education specialist credentials fall within CalTPA. So lots to manage, but we wanted to create a document that was a one document and with tabs and chapters within it, so that way we weren't managing multiple documents for that program guide. But the supports and what you can do as faculty, what is allowable for support, what candidates can expect as required supports, they are all aligned across the CalTPA, the PK3 CalTPA, and the Education Specialists CalTPAs, as well as CalAPA. Go to the next slide. So today, introduction, norms, we'll talk about outcomes. We'll talk about the CalPA structure, so performance assessment, whether it's an APA or CalTPA. We'll talk about required, acceptable, and unacceptable candidate supports. We'll go into the CalAPA program guide, the TPA program guide, and take a look at some upcoming program supports and contact information. So our CalPA team, I'm Marissa Luna Lopez. I'm a consultant here with the Performance Assessment Development Team, a component of DREA, the Division of Research, Evaluation, and Assessment here at the Commission. I'm joined here by my colleague Julie, if you want to say hello.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Julie Holmes. I'm the other consultant on the performance assessment team, and it's so great to see all of your faces here again. And thank you for not being so sick of us that you that you joined us again today. We're so happy. We've got lots to share. I'll kick it over to you, Xavier.
And good afternoon, everyone. My name is Xavier Webb. I'm a senior area director with Pearson and work very closely with both Julie and Marissa and the rest of the CTC team on the CalTPA and the CalAPA. I'm going to be able to help you out with some of the technical questions if you have any today, as well as just kind of run the slide deck and listening in. So good to see some familiar faces, and happy that you're all here.
All right, thank you. So if you could sign in the chat, again, your name, your position, and your institution, so we can get a feel for who's in the room. And we can probably head over to the next slide while folks are signing in and talk about some norms. I believe all folks' microphones are muted, and if you could keep it muted unless you're speaking. We are a decent sized group, or we're about 26 participants today, but please feel free to either unmute and ask questions, and we want this to be more of a conversation around candidate supports, and we'll ask you also to come up with some ideas and talk about ways to support candidates through performance assessment. Please, if you can, it's helpful if your camera is on, but again, if you're after lunch kind of watching a webinar, more than welcome to keep your camera off, no problem. If you could use the chat feature to post any questions as they are related to the topic, and let's keep them to a general focus. If you do have program specific or candidate specific questions, we can chat about it after the webinar, or you can send us an email. As always, avoid multitasking to hear all the information, and we'll honor time of the participants by moderating our own participation. Right. Go ahead and head over to the next slide. So today, again, it'll be an overview of required, acceptable, and unacceptable supports. We will be going through some of the resources available to candidates and program faculty that are on the website, and resource guides for CalAPA and CalTPA. And these are open, available, not password protected on the website. The CalTPA one is still being updated and will be uploaded to the website soon, but CalAPA is already there. Take a look at the next slide. So Cal APA, there are 3 cycles, and all 3 cycles investigate, plan, act, and reflect. And so cycle 1 is where a candidate analyzes data to inform school improvement and promote equity. But there were some changes in this year's version, but the majority of changes came with the introduction of commentary rather than annotations for both cycles 2 and 3 associated with their videos. And so cycle 2, facilitating communities of practice, and cycle 3, supporting teacher growth, where a candidate coaches a teacher. And then in cycle 2, the candidate comes up with a data-based problem of practice and facilitates a learning, a PLC, and implements a strategy and works through the data. And we also have PLCs starting up for our Cal TPA and Cal APA. Just a reminder, tomorrow at 9 a.m. for Cal TPA and 11 a.m. for Cal APA. We want to bring you all together to create a professional learning community around supporting candidates and ensuring that we are working with and using strategies that we borrow from one another, because again, we all have the same mission to prepare teacher candidates and administrators for California to meet the growing needs of the population. I'll go ahead and take a look at the next slide. So Cal TPA. Now, this has been just it's interesting. I attended an orientation for Cal TPA that a program invited me to speak briefly about some of the changes. And I went through my whole spiel about stuff, and then one of the people just raised their hands. They go, "All right, what?" There's a Cal TPA and it's MPA and LPA, or cycle 1 and cycle 2. Okay, what? And so we wanted to make sure that we went through this for folks, because it's a lot, right? There's a lot of different versions. So PK3, multiple subjects, and all the education specialist areas now have a math performance assessment and a literacy performance assessment, MPA and LPA. The MPA used what was formerly cycle 1 as a base and was shifted to make it specific to math. And we did assemble a group of a work group of sorts to support the shift over from cycle 1 to MPA, that we did field tests in the spring and in the fall and the spring actually, and came to the commission with results, and they approved the performance assessment. And then the LPA, the literacy performance assessment, this is a result of SB 488 and the work that came from that law, and it shifted what was once cycle 2 into the LPA, which is including the requirements of SB 488 and replacing the retired RICA at the end of this month. But RICA got extended a little bit, so yeah. But each one of these credentials, the PK3, multiple subject, and the education specialist credentials, all have a literacy requirement to them. So that's why there's this many different versions of the LPA. But for those of you who've been attending some of these deep dives, or if you have nothing else to do, you can watch our videos on YouTube for each of these individual deep dives. You'll see that they actually are more alike than they are different, but there are subtle differences between each one depending upon what the authorization statement of the candidate. And so just that right there is I think half of the new knowledge that is important to know. But for single subject and world language candidates, they do not have a requirement to meet literacy. And so they continue to have cycle 1 and cycle 2, where but the changes and updates that were made to the MPA and LPA were carried through to cycle 1 and cycle 2, including the shift to commentary from annotations, the updates of what is required for cycle 1 videos, cycle 2. So we tried to pull over some of those important changes to these performance assessments, and every version 1 of the performance assessment is a 16-14 pass. So that means 16 points to pass, 14 points for secondary, and there is no additional double one side condition. So a candidate just needs to score a total of 16 points or better to pass these version 1s of all of the CalTPA. But if they find themselves in that 14 or 15 space, then they may be eligible for a secondary passing. And what that means is you as a program say, this candidate is scored a 15 on this performance assessment. So let's take a look. Okay, the candidate did a really great job in planning and just thinking about the LPA, did a really nice job in teaching and assessing. But when I take a look at some of these rubrics, maybe they didn't do so well at providing that actionable feedback. Or maybe they didn't do so well in adjusting their instruction. Or maybe there was space to grow in reflection or in their apply stage. And so, but if you have evidence in coursework or in clinical practice where they have met these expectations, these teacher performance expectations, then that would be an excellent space to say, here's my evidence for justifying that this candidate is ready to receive their preliminary credential. But unfortunately, if they get a 14 or a 15 and it confirms something else that they have not demonstrated in another space, then as a program, you're not obligated to recommend a candidate with the secondary passing standard. It's only if you see it somewhere else that you would move forward with that, because sometimes it's something that you recognize that they need in clinical practice, something that is recognized that they need in coursework, and then it's confirmed by their score on the teacher performance assessment. So it is absolutely up to the purview of a program as to how they are going to recommend a candidate. But I would also recommend that if you have a candidate that perhaps scored in that secondary passing standard or any score, to use some of that data in building out their IDP, their individual development plan, to be able to continue that work when they get into induction. So so it's a 16 to pass, a 14 if they have evidence elsewhere for that secondary passing standard, and it's 2 cycles, still 2 cycles, plan, teach and assess, reflect and apply. The MPA and cycle 1 are 1 lesson. The LPA and cycle 2 are 3 to 5 lessons. So there are similarities between the two, but we just wanted to make sure that everyone understands this part. And I didn't slow down enough because this is something I went through a while ago and realized it when someone's like, what? And asked me that question. So I just wanted to make sure we spent just a few minutes talking about this. We can go ahead and go to the next slide. All right, and I'm going to turn it over to Julie to talk about some required supports.
Okay, let's switch gears a little bit. I've been thinking a lot about required, acceptable and unacceptable supports, and I was thinking back prior to when I came to the commission and my time with candidates and supporting them with the CalTPA. And I kind of felt at my institution like a one-man show. Like I knew a lot about it, but I didn't necessarily bring in others, I think, to really understand it and support with the CalTPA. And now that I'm in this position, I see just the value of really having really that strong support at your institution, wherever you are, that really for the more that understand and can offer support to candidates, the better they will do. So kind of just want to walk you through again this refresher of what you are required to do as part of your program's accreditation and your selection of using the CalTPA. So let's talk about a few. Well, we'll talk about all of them. There's 6. So they're short. But what are you required to do as a program? First, providing those candidates with access to the CalAPA or the CalTPA assessment preparation materials. So send them the guides. That's fine. Send them webinars that we've been on that are recorded and out there. Great, they can watch those. Any other prep materials that you might have, give them access to all of those things. That's completely fine. You don't have to hold on to those assessment guides and wait for the candidate to register. It's maybe a good process to give it to them early. If they need to wait and register, next month, because maybe they don't have the money yet. So be sure and give them those prep materials, webinars, anything else that you can think of that would be helpful to the candidate. And it's also invaluable to really go over the expectations for the candidate regarding the performance on the assessment. So really, we'll talk about this in a new slide, but really going through those rubrics and talking about the expectation for how this is going to roll out, how this is going to be part of their student teaching, part of their clinical placement, maybe they're an intern, the timelines, things like that. So lots to go over. You can absolutely give them the templates. You can give them the templates as well. They can start going through those and working on those. When the candidate does go into the evaluation systems platform to register, they're going to get their own copy again of all of the guide and the templates as well. But you can give it to them, provide it to them, and start working on it in coursework. Another required support is really going through and explaining those APA and TPA leadership or instructional cycles and rubrics. Really, I mean, explaining the sequential process of the 4 steps, talking and looking at the rubrics and how they are tied to each step, how scoring is scored. What do analytic rubrics look like? Scoring starts at level 3. Looking for clear evidence of each construct. And when you meet all of those in a level 3, then you consider the 4. And if you meet that, then you move up to consider the 5. And also looking at, well, if you're not providing clear evidence, maybe it's minimal or an attempt, that would bring them down to a 2, and a level 1 would be no evidence. So really talking about those is extremely important, and having those guided discussions with them. Maybe you want to do an orientation overview session. I really love learning about how programs are doing and embedding the CalTPA or the CalAPA. Some look at it. I'm borrowing this from Riverside County Office of Ed. Some look at it as a sprint and they have 5 workshops. Some look at this work as, spread out over the course of a semester. So it might be more of a marathon. Whichever way you have it embedded in your program is great. It's fine. We just want to remind you of those supports to be providing to candidates so that they don't feel alone. This was never meant to be done in a siloed situation. All right. Required support number 3 might be my favorite. And this is where I can just go over 100 different ways to think about this, but really engaging your candidates in formative experiences that are aligned with the CalAPA or the CalTPA. So thinking about, and this is where, it probably takes a committee at your institution to really think about how you can align different experiences in coursework with the CalTPA, whether that's your fieldwork observation forms, whether that is certain coursework. So this will be embedded here, and that aligns with step 2 of the CalTPA or cycle 3 of the APA. So really thinking about where the pieces fall in your program and how you're going to support candidates with that. Think about reflection, step 3. I mean, that's a great way to embed that in fieldwork practices and things like that. So just thinking through how you are going to provide those experiences to candidates. Let's look at support number 4. So really ensuring that your candidates complete their assessment within a cooperating school or a district during their clinical experience. So setting them up for success, that they are in the right setting, and really helping them and giving them guidance on verifying those appropriate permissions for video recording. So what does that guidance look like? Many schools, they just need to go talk to someone at their school site that maybe there are already permissions on file. Maybe they need to send out a letter to the students that will be in their video. We also have a sample letter up on the evaluation systems website as well. So helping them and setting them up for success early. Required support number 5 looks like number 3 exactly, where again engaging them in those formative experiences and thinking about that alignment from the assignments, the different tasks of the APA or the CalTPA, um, giving them experience in gathering student data, selecting focus students, drafting responses, thinking through those different tasks and how they can be embedded. And finally, required support number 6 is a good one. Providing candidates who are not successful with additional support. So helping them remediate and focus on sitting with them and helping them understand what it was that perhaps why they got maybe a condition code, or maybe they didn't meet the passing standard. So helping them identify which part they were not successful on, and then coming up with a plan for resubmission. So that's really an important step. We get a lot of emails from candidates. They're trying to understand why they didn't pass or why they got condition coded. You as programs can always reach out to us as well. So that's a great, sort of chain, is if candidates come to you for remediation and you're helping them and you're looking at the work and you're trying to figure it out, and then you can always kick that up to us and we can help you so that you can have what you need to support the candidate as well. All right, Marissa, unacceptable supports now.
All right, acceptable supports. This is my favorite part of the topic. These are all the cool things that you actually can do and you should be doing and you can come up with that are ways to get candidates to work through the preparation for the Cal TPA or the Cal APA. So let's take a look at the first slide. Okay, we're starting with Cal APA. So referring candidates to that glossary, having a discussion about some of these terms. That term narrative analysis, understanding what that means and how a candidate would engage in narrative analysis around their videos is so very important. Reviewing examples of effective school leadership. Not just talking through the Cal APA, but what does an effective leader do? How are they effective? What do they do in their school, in their district, and how can we aspire to be that person? Referring candidates to a writing workshop. Sometimes they struggle with the amount of writing with these performance assessments. And that was an important thing that we took into consideration around these performance assessments with version 1 for the Cal TPA. And I know this is specifically to Cal APA, and even the shift over from annotations to commentary. Cal APA candidates can record commentary. If they are someone that is just, you talk to them and they are just magnetic, amazing, have a really great, conversation, but when it comes to writing, it doesn't necessarily flow through. They can do that commentary in via video. So there's a lot of different ways that people can show what they know. Also recommending and or providing specific assistance to address areas in which a candidate has demonstrated a need for improvement. And it's not just around the Cal APA, but in coursework and in their clinical practice spaces. So and I think truly that reflective writing is a challenge for just about anyone, especially in society today. I feel like we just buzz through everything so quickly, and you ask somebody what they did 2 days ago, and they're like, I don't know, maybe was it a Tuesday? I think on a Tuesday I normally do these things, but we don't really take that time to reflect, think through, and I don't know. I tend to have those reflective conversations with myself in the shower. Man, if I would have had this, I would have said this or this or that, but I just need to wash my hair. So, no, but truly that going through that reflective conversation and modeling those pieces for folks and providing them space and time to manage that in classes is absolutely important, and something that I know that we do well in programs. So let's go ahead and take a look at the next page. So, explaining scoring rubrics by using them in formative exercises. When I was teaching through the CalTPA to candidates, I used to provide them assignments, and then I would use the rubric, and we would go through those rubrics, especially when I would give them a model of a performance assessment. We'd use the rubric to go through and score it, and then identify spaces where they could add more. But if you create an assignment in a class, you could use that rubric and have the candidates score themselves, have them score each other, and just get familiar with those rubrics, because sometimes people just want to just start filling out templates without looking at the rubrics. That happens so often. I'm just like, whenever I ask someone why they didn't, what they did, oh, I just started filling out the templates. I don't know. Well, okay, so then we really need to spend some time with those rubrics, because everything is spelled out. And the more practice they have with the rubrics, the more familiar. Linking content and experiences from the preparation to the CAPE as measured by the CalAPA cycle. So really just making that strong connection between what we're doing in CalAPA and what it looks like in the spaces that administrators occupy. Scheduling time, or creating a timeline for completion of CalAPA. Personally, when I was going through my admin program and doing the CalAPA, I drew a picture of myself of how happy I was going to look when I was done with the class and the CalAPA, and I myself going, yay! And then from there, I marched backwards. Okay, all right, well, I'm here now, and I have 3.5 months to get this done. And what do I need to do in those 3.5 months? Now, looking at cycle 2 for CalAPA, that one takes some time, because the candidate has to, have that initial meeting to come up with their, look at their data and come up with their problem of practice and choose that strategy. And then they have to implement it over a course of, a few weeks to be able to get some, early returns on data, and to see if that strategy is addressing the equity gap of the students at their site. That takes time. And if I said, this is due in December, I'm going to start it at Thanksgiving. It's not going to work, right? And so, and I was an intern administrator, and I've worked with interns a lot, and interns always think they're going to have more time later. Oh, that'll have more time later. I'll take care of it then. There's never any more time. It just gets worse. Tell them it just piles up, and now you just got this huge, stuff to do, and then it becomes stressful. Then it becomes just a hoop to hop through, not an opportunity to learn, not an opportunity to really show what you know, because we didn't time things out. And some people will tell you, well, I do my best work at the last minute. Not in this place. Not in this space, not in this place. And you might be able to knock out an essay or something if you stay up all night, but I don't know, the older I get, I found myself watching TV too late last night, and I woke up this morning, I was like, oh God, I must be 40. So truly, it's something to help schedule and timeline people through. Then conducting check-in meetings to discuss timelines and deliverables. When I knew that I had to meet with my dissertation chair, I was ready, because I didn't want to waste that woman's time. and it helps to keep people on track, and to hold those check-ins on a regular interval, and saying, okay, this is what. And when I was doing my master's, I remember my advisor, she would read my stuff on a certain day and give me these edits, and then I had to do what she said when I came back to the next meeting. And we moved through in that pace. And by setting someone on as Julie says, a perky pace, right? We want to keep them moving. We want to keep them moving, but we don't want to go so fast that we're leaving people behind. But by creating that timeline, by creating deliverables, by having these, a good friend of mine, he's a math teacher. He always says, inch by inch, math is a cinch, right? So just working through them. All right, let's take a look at page 3. So paraphrasing or answering questions for that candidates have. It's it's important to be able to look at those templates and be able to answer questions candidates have. And we recognize that there are, now in CalAPA, we have this new thing with commentary, and it can be challenging to understand, and so please, shoot me a question so we can work together and support candidates through, and also for CalTPA as well. But answering the questions that they have, and candidates don't know what they don't know, and so making sure to make space for discovery together in class. Encouraging candidates to self-assess, use the rubrics on their own stuff. What is this asking for and where is it? Because an assessor, they look at that level 3 and they go into a submission and they take a screenshot of the evidence and they put it into a file. Candidates can do the same thing as they are going through their own submissions, and not just getting in the templates and starting to answer stuff. They need to go into the rubric and see that they have the stuff there. Answering common questions in a group setting. Sometimes that can be a challenge, especially if you have someone that's a little quieter, doesn't necessarily want to raise hands. So sometimes even putting them in small groups and having them work with 2 or 3 other people through something, and then come up with, and requiring that they come up with a list of questions to pose to the group, because if someone has a question, probably more have that same question. And then facilitating candidate discussion groups. I jumped ahead there, but peer-to-peer support is so important. And for me, it was that, through my credentialing program, through all these spaces, I met a lot of really cool people that I still can contact and still spend time with and check in with. And so creating those discussion groups and peer-to-peer support, that can really help someone grow professionally as well. I see a question in the chat. Basically, what assessors do when they are looking at a submission is they look for the evidence in a document and they note where it is and they put it into a file that goes with that rubric. And so when they go through and they go through and they look for all the evidence to meet the constructs for that rubric, they identify where in the submission they found the evidence, and that helps them to reach that piece. And apologies if I'm speaking out of turn. I was an assessor a while ago. It was like 2020 when I was an assessor, so it was maybe a little bit of a different situation. But I would pull up a submission. I would be looking at my rubrics. I had a scoring flow and looking for evidence. Once I found it, I would highlight it, screenshot it, put it into a folder, and says it meets this construct and this piece. So that's pretty much how assessors they work, and every assessor is absolutely trained to just say the submission it's going to pass. It's going to be fantastic. Now I just need to find the evidence to meet the constructs. That's the absolute, yeah, sorry, tagging. Thank you. That's a better word for it, tagging evidence. But yeah, so absolutely going through. But it's been a while for me, so. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the next slide. So directing candidates to resources on current research, evidence-based practices. There's so much coming out in the field, and there's some seminal pieces that we absolutely want to refer candidates to, but then we also want to keep up with the most up-to-date research coming out about PLCs, about teacher coaching, about equity issues in spaces for leaders. So we want to absolutely be keeping up with the research, and then assisting candidates in understanding how to use the electronic platforms. Right, sometimes that could be a barrier for folks, just being able to use some of the technology tools. And so inviting tech support to come to class, to inviting folks to collaborate around some of the materials are important. Then arranging that technical assistance for video recorded portions of the CalAPA. Now, this has always been a question, and it's absolutely at the top of our list for our PLC around CalAPA is the shift from only allowing for unedited video clips, continuous and unedited video clips, to allowing for edited clips, and that's for both CalAPA and CalTPA. It's not required that a person edit a video clip. It's not required at all. And we, as the commission, can't necessarily say use this specific program or another, because we don't know what programs institutions have access to. Some programs, some institutions use Teams, some use Zoom, some use, whatever it is that they are utilizing. And those are just two of the things that we here utilize at the commission. But people have different computers, different access. So there's a lot of different ways to edit videos, and candidates often are savvy about this, but for the ones that are not, finding someone in your institution to support folks on some of these pieces, and sometimes it's just one class session to invite someone to come and speak to them about what they have access to. And then providing and discussing support documents such as the acceptable support. So telling the candidates at the beginning what I can do and what I can't do. I can't do certain things. I can't do this thing for you. I can't, but we're going to do it together. It's not something you're expected to do alone, because that's why you're in this space. You're in this space to learn. Let's take a look at the next slide. So now we're into TPA, acceptable forms of support. And we broke these up because there's a lot of similarities, but there are some differences. So referring candidates to that glossary. Again, having that common language, common understanding, so that way the candidate understands how the assessor is interpreting a specific term as they look at a rubric. Reviewing examples of effective teaching. So this is not just examples of a sample TPA, which we are working on. Absolutely, we have a submission deadline, right? And we're going to be looking through, and hopefully we can find mid-range submissions to release. But at this point, we don't have any for version 1, and we have really, really old ones for the CalAPA. And so we are absolutely going to go on a hunting trip and try to find these example submissions to post on our website. More to come with that. But referring candidates to writing workshop, again, there's always support for writing, and institutions have oftentimes tutoring centers. And when I was at an institution of higher ed, I went to the tutoring center and I said, hey, you might have some folks come through and ask about this. Here's what it is, and here's how you can help them. And by doing that and then setting up that partnership, it allowed for candidates to have another space to seek additional support around some of these just writing components. Recommending and providing specific assistance in areas that a candidate has demonstrated need. A big thing that candidates demonstrated need for when I was working with them is how to integrate ELD. Understanding what English language development was, especially for a candidate who they themselves were English only and may not recognize some of the ways to support learners of English or multilingual heritage learner students. But going through and identifying spaces, misunderstandings, gaps in knowledge, and then addressing those absolutely is what we are doing in a credentialing program, not just for the teacher performance assessment, but to prepare them to be a teacher, because we all plan, teach and monitor, teach and assess, reflect and apply. That's the cycle of teaching. And so those are all things that are important to do as we are supporting candidates. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at page 2. So explaining scoring rubrics by using them in formative exercises. And that was one thing I used to do. I used to make my own really, really crummy version of a CalTPA. And then I'd give the candidates a rubric and I'd tell them, okay, we're going to circle, box in, color code what you find in this step. And then we're going to score it. Is it good? Is it not so good? And then, because I'd always give them a crummy example, I would have them add to it to make it a better submission. So they'd work through different steps of the process. Some would be in plan, and it would mostly be in plan because the videos, that's a different scenario. But the reflect and apply pieces, I would give them that sample. We'd look at that rubric, we'd score it, and see what I could have done to get a better submission so I could pass my TPA. And I always thank them for their help because I really needed it for my CalTPA submission. And then linking content and experiences to preparation programs to those TPEs. If a candidate doesn't necessarily see how things align to what they're doing, understanding that the teacher performance expectations are what they are demonstrating, and that's I would tell the candidates the Common Core state standards are the standards for the kids, and the TPEs are the standards for you. And then as you move into induction, the CSTP come in. So these are what we're doing, and these assessments, these courses, this clinical practice, all of this measures these TPEs. And that's what we're doing here, is showing that you have demonstrated competency in all TPEs. Again, providing that schedule and timeline for completion of the TPA for candidates, having them make a plan, and even taking out their calendar. If they're student teaching or a teacher of record, taking out their work calendar and what's coming up, trying to put everything on a calendar for a certain amount of time. And again, inch by inch, it's a cinch. Really, sometimes you got to look at 4 months, then down to months, and then adding things in and allowing folks to not have such tight timelines. Get going on stuff as soon as possible, so that way there is more time for the steps of reflect, the steps of apply, and making sure that they have a target submission date that they want to get their score by. And their target submission date, even if it's due on a Thursday, their due date is on a Tuesday. So they're not at 11:30 on a Thursday trying to upload their stuff. And that's when mistakes happen, right? When we're in a rush, when we're tired, when we're stressed, and we accidentally upload a copy of the assessment guide instead of our template A, and then we submit it, and we're like, oh, thank goodness. Oh, goodness. And then 3 weeks later, condition code because it's an incomplete submission. And that right there, I just imagine how defeated someone would feel, especially finding out it was such a simple thing. And so building out those timelines, explaining how to submit those pieces, and then again those check-in meetings. How are we doing? What's going on? How can I be of service to you? I ascribe to servant leadership as much as possible. How can we serve? How can we work with you? How can we help get through the work? Because I can't do it for you. It's absolutely their turn, but I can be there to support, to answer questions, and everybody needs just a different way of supporting. So we can go ahead, next slide. Co-planning an instructional segment with the cooperating teacher, the peer. Get those cooperating teachers involved. They absolutely, a lot of them will say, well, I never had to do a TPA, so I have no idea what to do on this thing. I was like, wow, well, have you taught a lesson? Have you reflected on it? Have you made instructional changes based on what you learned? Well, yeah, well, you've absolutely done what the task of a TPA. And so, guiding a candidate through just this, looking at those rubrics, turning those rubric constructs into questions, looking at the candidate, talking with them through. Those cooperating teachers spend a lot of time with their candidates, whether they are a student teacher or in a different pathway like residency or internship. There's a cooperating teacher for every single one of those candidates. Providing access to translations of instructional materials for submissions that include evidence in languages other than English, and require translations. Thinking about that. There's a lot about translations. So some of these are a little bit version 70 or version 3. There has been a shift with what can be provided in the language of instruction, and I know that there is a greater conversation around completing the LPA in languages other than English. And so I won't get too much into that, but do understand that this conversation is absolutely still happening. And we will be updating folks as soon as possible. Paraphrasing, answering questions, and encouraging candidates to self-assess. We spoke about those around CalAPA, but really not just writing stuff in the template and then just saying, I'm done with it, just get it away from me. Or that attitude, I just want to get this over with. I just want to, I say, yeah, you don't want to get this over with. You want to pass. You want to complete it. You want it to be done and the representative of your best work as a new teacher. So it's more than just getting it over with or getting it done. It's completing it to standard and passing and being able to move forward in your career. Go ahead and get next page. Answering common questions, facilitating discussions, bringing peers together, directing candidates to resources, evidence-based practices, and assisting candidates to understand about the electronic platform. A lot of the performance assessment is submitting, and we have office hours every week, and every single week we get the question, how do I register and how do I submit? Do you guys accept PDFs? Do you accept MP4s? How do I smush a video to put it into the, to upload it? And there is a chapter in the back of the assessment guide that says what to submit and has some lots of different information, but people don't seem to catch it or they're so anxious about it. But just explaining that chapter, reading it with the candidates so they understand, putting them in groups so they can take a look at different formats of materials that we accept when they upload to the platform. Um, it's it's a challenge for folks, and we don't want that to be a barrier to submitting. So asking folks to address it and talk about it in class and make sure that everyone understands. And if you do ever have any questions, like we get questions from time to time, especially about CalAPA, if someone wants to include charts or data, does that count against the page limit? Or we had another question in another webinar, if someone was submitting something in an Asian language and the font size was different, it would change the page length. We absolutely send that to our scoring team and make sure that folks understand those pieces. But really, that electronic platform, we don't want that to be a limitation. We want to, it's where hopefully it'll make it easier for someone to organize their materials. We can go ahead and go to the next slide. And arranging technical assistance, as well as discussing those supports, talking about what we can do, what we can't do, and understanding what candidates can and cannot do, and the rules of participation. And that brings up a topic that we have been discussing a lot here at the commission around AI, right, and the use of AI. And we do not have a specific AI policy. We defer to programs about AI, but we do have originality policies. Candidates should not be submitting someone else's submission. They do check. There is an automatic check where they are scanning submissions on other submissions, and we had an instance where a candidate submitted someone else's submission and just changed some key words. And when it ran through the originality, it came up like 98% as matching another submission. And so you can absolutely let candidates know that they should not get a submission from a friend or download one from somewhere they find, on the internet. But they absolutely, we when people ask us about AI policy, we point them back to their institution's AI policy as to how it can be managed. And AI can be a tremendous tool, but we had someone talk about this in last spring, and she said human in, human out if you're using AI, because garbage in, garbage out, right? And you want to make sure that as a candidate is working through this, that they're specific enough, because oftentimes AI can give you some like vague responses. And yeah, so those CalTPA rules of participation, those are things that candidates affirm and attest to when they're submitting. Just make sure they understand what they're affirming and attesting to, and that it could have major consequences for their submission if, if their institution, if they get a submission from someone else, change a few words and turn it in, get hit for originality, they can be excused from their program, depending upon the policy of the institution. So it's, it's important to cover that. So, all right, let's see here. Okay, unacceptable supports, but let me check the chat.
Yeah, you've got some questions.
Yeah, let's see here. Where can we locate figures, snapshots, vignettes, framing questions that were mentioned as candidate supports in the spring? The webinar that we did in the spring is in our YouTube channel. And we had some fantastic program representatives come and talk about different things that they did. Maybe we can, we kind of take turns. Maybe we can find the video and send it out as a resource when we email out this presentation after, because like I said, it was a really good presentation. Thank you for helping me about the tagging evidence thing. I'm like, it's a screenshot you put in a folder. I don't know. We've done so much assessing work. Yeah. And then the shell TPA. So does this I just want to make sure I'm answering your question about the shell, like just what the candidate sees when they up like an e-portfolio.
I wasn't sure
Or,
either about that one.
um,
Sample
So
account.
that was Julie, I think. But for me, I said I would like, or Jeannie, sorry. My name is Deborah. I would love that too. What it is for me, and I'm not sure if this is what Jeannie is also experiencing. So I'll have candidates ask me questions and I can't see what they see unless we can jump on and screen share. And I don't have access to like all the things they see once they have an account, right? And so we support all the different credentials, and their questions are sometimes nuanced and like what's available to them on their screen. And so I know we talked with Julie a few days ago about this idea of like, is there a way for us to have, I think Jeannie called it a shell account. And we were just like a sample account where we can see whatever any candidates see. And I don't know if that's possible or if that's what others are looking for.
I remember that conversation, Deborah. We were talking like almost like a parent account, like a parent would be able to view it.
Exactly.
To edit it.
Yes.
That's a really great question. I think it's a question for evaluation systems and their platform, and probably not something Xavier could answer today, but maybe Xavier, if that's something you could take and kick that up the ladder as a request from the field.
We can look into that.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that. So the next question of can we review template drafts to identify common errors and direct reminders such as remember to integrate a math practice in your objective? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The thing you can't do is say this is wrong and here's what you should write. Right? But if you are looking at someone's submission and you see a goal without a practice and or without content, you can remind someone to include it, but just don't tell them exactly like what to include, right? And you could even just circle and say, hey, take a look at this. Take a look at this. Does this meet the requirement of having the both the content and the practice? If you see it both, can you show me where? And asking questions, coaching questions to folks, but absolutely, you can take a look at candidates' documents. I personally, when I was managing candidates, I didn't review their specific documents simply for time's sake. If I had 30 candidates in a class, That's a lot of reading for me to do. So what I would do is set up individual meetings with candidates, and we would look at certain pieces, certain targets on the rubrics, and I would, what do you have for this? What do you have for this? Okay, what do you think? Do you think that this meets? And just have that coaching conversation. But if you want to just provide, reminders to all candidates, remember that this has to be there. Okay, circle it in, circle this part of your submission, or underline this piece, or don't forget to address pieces. That's absolutely the coaching conversations that you can have with candidates. The big thing you want to not do is also, it's just the workload of it. Editing it for grammar, they should really find someone to support them with that. But taking a look and asking them the questions, turning it around. Where did you demonstrate this? How is this? And asking them to identify the information like they were an assessor, and reviewing their own document. But sometimes people don't see things that they don't know. They don't know what they don't know. And so just letting them know, especially around foundational skills. If you get a literacy performance assessment and they are identifying something that is not a foundational reading skill as a foundational reading skill, you can absolutely tell them that and just let them know. Here are some examples. Let's take a look at the bottom of the rubric of what some foundational reading skills are. And here are some ways that you can do that. Yeah, and that's an important part of that iterative process. The question I always ask myself is it my work or is it their work? Who's the one turning this in? Whose work is it? If it's their work with your support, absolutely. If it's your work, no, because you're already a teacher. You're already made it. You're there. You crossed that finish line. It's their turn to do the work. And so any way that you're working with someone, talking to someone, talking through things with them, if you find that it's your work, not theirs, don't do this, do this. Don't select that video, pick this. If you do this, I guarantee you'll pass. Unless you say, there's no guarantees in anything, but what I would tell candidates is if you go through your rubric constructs and you identify strong evidence for each one of them, for a 3, then you have a very strong submission, and an assessor will see that. But maybe there's places where people need some additional work, and you can provide them with more resources, books, materials, websites to review, videos to watch, to be able to bump up any space where they have questions. So anything to add to that one, Julie? Because that's always a good question that we get.
No, I think you did a great job. Yeah, it's just you're coaching them. You're coaching them through their work, and some candidates are going to come to you a lot more often and be like, please help me, please help me. I'm not getting this. I'm not. It's really tempting sometimes to want to do the work for them. So yeah, just stepping back, getting them to own their understanding of the rubric, like Marissa mentioned, flipping that rubric to a question. Say, did you use recent information to blah, 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 and then show me where you have that evidence, and or put them in peer-to-peer groups. So I think there's lots of ways that you can think to support them without overstepping and doing the work for them.
Mm-hmm. And that goes for both CalTPA and CalAPA. Absolutely. Again, if it's more your work than theirs, then that's a problem. But if it is your work or their work, that's
Right.
that's what we're supposed to be doing here. Now we have a few more questions in the chat. Okay. The test account thing, writing standard and incorrect. Yeah, if you see something that's just factually incorrect, you can absolutely correct a candidate on that without, and then provide them with more resources. Like I said, if you find that they say something's a foundational skill and it's not, it's important to let them know that so they don't go forward and build this whole thing in saying that, I don't know, writing a 5-paragraph essay is a foundational skill. Like, I mean, you want to make sure, but, and then pointing them, because we point them directly to some examples of foundational skills with an asterisk underneath a rubric. You can absolutely do that. And
Right.
Our friends at RCOE, they often say, if you think they know what foundational skills are, tell them again, because some folks have missing spaces in their own education. They don't necessarily have all the foundational
Right.
skills. So making sure to point those things out.
And
And
the
then the
same thing
last
for
question.
math.
Oh,
Same thing for math. So
oh
if
yeah.
you see that a candidate, they're in a TK setting, but they're using the wrong standards or using California Common Core standards, redirect them. So for PK and TK, you would use the California PTKLF strands, not the Common Core. That's for kinder and above. So great things to just, help them with those, those really fundamental pieces. We're not trying to set them up for failure. We don't want to knowingly, know that they'll not succeed.
Yeah, performance assessments aren't a gotcha. So
Yeah, we don't want that.
yeah. And then the last question I
Yeah.
see here about, or from Tammy, about the AI rubric to evaluate that, I would say it's an excellent tool. We had someone present on it in the spring. But again, whatever your institutional policy is around AI is what we would follow and what we would go through. But yeah, like you said, you could put a submission through with the rubric, and you know, that the feedback is similar. Yeah. Again, we often defer to the institution's policy for AI, but AI can be a powerful tool. But again, human in, human out. Because just like when you're doing statistics and putting it into some kind of machine, garbage in, garbage out, right? And a
Right.
candidate can't just put in a prompt and, and get some random general. I mean,
Right. And
it really does come through. So go ahead, Julie.
Director Juliet Wallleitner reminded me that a byproduct of the RDI TPA work group is that they're going to be hosting an AI forum and be looking at this more deeply, I believe, at the start of the new year, around January. So it is something that the commission has on, that is on their mind and will be digging into deeper very soon.
Yeah, and I know the CDE is actually running a work group right now as well, looking at AI in education. So but unfortunately, with the speed of how AI works, by the time policy comes out, it might be completely. So as you work with your candidates, and again, just
You know,
human in, human out.
we'll be replaced with avatars soon. So.
Oh yeah.
All right, I should probably move on to unacceptable supports, and so we can go look at the program guides.
Yep. Sorry.
Do you know the SNL character Debbie Downer? I always feel like the Debbie Downer character when I go over the unacceptable supports. These are really common sense. You know when you've overstepped, you know when you've gone too far with a candidate. We've all probably been there at one point or another where we've gone too much. We've helped them too much. This needs to be their work moving forward. So again, I'll just quickly review these and then we'll get into the guides. But so just providing the candidate with the content or the answer in response to a CalTPA prompt or task. Same with CalTPA. So choosing their data sources, conducting their data analysis, drawing their conclusions for them. For CalTPA, selecting their focus students for them, analyzing the student work for them. So all of these things would be, a step too far in your level of support. Also, editing a candidate's response prior to submission. If you're like, oh, just give it to me, I will edit this up and fix this, then that would be, again, a step too far. So again, getting them to do the work. You can certainly point out you're the coach, what's unclear. You're a little vague on this part. I'd go back and relook at this again. Go back and look at the rubric and then look at your section on leveraging assets, something like that, but not editing their work. All right, and the next slide is conjecturing on what either the Cal APA or TPA performance requirements, expectations, or what is deemed as sufficient evidence. So, conjecturing is you're forming an opinion based on incomplete information, and we can't guess. We can't guess. Like, if you do this, you're definitely going to pass. Don't worry about it. We can't make those promises. We can't guess when we have incomplete information. Also, shy away from using those institutional terms and definitions as substitutes for what's in the Cal APA or Cal TPA. This could, this could impact the candidate and their scoring if it's not understood what the terminology or they're using a different definition. That's why we have that common glossary at the end of the guide. So whenever you get to a word and the candidate's like, what does that mean for, you know, to leverage assets? Let's go to the glossary and let's look it up and let's all talk about it. Let's talk about UDL. Let's get all on the same page. If you're offering critique of a candidate's draft responses prior to their submission for official scoring, and that provides specific alternative responses or answers. So again, that goes back to doing that work for them. And then telling a candidate which video clips to use or work samples to select would be, again, a step too far. So this needs to be the candidate's work, the candidate's decision. You're there to coach. You can certainly coach them through that, but you are not telling them. You are not the decider. And finally, describing scenarios or hypothetical examples or using submissions from other performance assessments like EdTPA or FAST to maybe approximate the CalTPA performance standards or benchmarks. So again, this kind of goes back to those hypotheticals. If you do this, then you're definitely going to pass. Just stick to this. This is the secret sauce to passing. If you do it this way, here's what you do and just describe it this way and you'll pass. Again, that's a step too far. And we don't want to use the FAST or the EdTPA assessments to approximate the CalTPA because they are different. They're scored differently. They're looked at differently. And then finally, uploading a candidate's responses publicly to any of your websites or through social media. Please take those down to protect candidate and student privacy. All right, let's move into the guide.
Apologies for chattering so much that we don't have as much time for this program guide, but the program guide for CalAPA, I'm going to just go ahead and put a link to it in the chat. It is on the website, and if we could potentially, if Xavier, if you're prepared, can we jump over to the guide to take a look at it? Let me see. So the CalAPA program guide, again, is on the website. Let's go ahead and just take a look at the table of contents. Okay, now one thing about this one that I will say, it does say version 6 on the front. I know we're in version 8 of CalAPA, but that's because the program guide wasn't in existence for a couple of years. So this is the most up-to-date document. And this has a lot of really good information for candidates and for programs. It's geared towards faculty and folks that are teaching and guiding candidates through the CalAPA. Talks about roles and responsibilities, understanding the process, supporting candidates, and then if we scroll down a little bit, some of those foundational concepts that are being covered in the CalAPA, looking at analytic rubrics, understanding those pieces, and then additional support like writing support, video, technical support, and video selections. And it says timestamps and annotations, and that's something that we absolutely need to update because now we're in commentary. But maybe we can click on candidate remediation. Will that take us to page 9? And we could just take a look at one thing, for example. Yeah, so this right here, these are all just specific topics for this is about how to work with candidates that were not successful in meeting the passing standard, the PASC standard, some suggested remedies for the different cycles. If we scroll down a little bit, it's talking about some suggested supports for, in different steps. And we can keep scrolling a little bit. I'm just really briefly going to talk about this assessment guide because our program guide. I just wanted to make sure that folks understood that this was a resource that is there, that has a lot of really good information for the CalAPA, for supporting candidates, and also it's a quick document. It's it's not a whole heck of a lot of pages to read, but it's a quick document to provide to faculty members who might be new to teaching a course where Cal APA is embedded. And so it can provide some good background information. And we've also heard from candidates that they check out our CTC YouTube channel when they are completing their performance assessments. I've especially heard from Cal APA candidates as they've dug through some of these resources that are geared towards faculty, and they're like, well, can I participate? I am wanting to complete this assessment. So any one of these resources are absolutely available to you to screenshot, to utilize, to build your own institutional presentations for candidates. But I did want to make sure we left time for Julie to speak through the Cal TPA guide. But this one is here and available on the website, whereas the Cal TPA one is coming out. So I'll turn it back over to Julie.
All right. Thanks, Marissa. Okay. Thanks, Xavier. Pulled it up. So as Marissa mentioned, this is not out yet. It will be out and official next week. So we're just sharing the watermark draft with you to visually see it. We're not going to send it out until next week. So this is a mega guide. It's almost 200 pages. So the Control F feature will be your very best friend as you navigate this. So I want to walk you through it because the very beginning has some great resources that is applicable to all programs, all coordinators, faculty, anyone who wants to learn more about CalTPA. This is sort of the big universal stuff. And then we get into chapters as we get into the nitty gritty of the guide. So let's skip over all of this and I think go to page 5 maybe, where it talks about what coordinators need to know to get started. So getting started, what does the CalTPA coordinator need to know and how to stay connected? So there's so many links, so many resources, our listservs, our deep dives. Let's keep scrolling down for everybody. Our office hours for candidates, for programs, things that you might already know because you subscribe to PSDE News. But this just goes into a lot more depth about everything. We have our coordinator orientations, our PLCs that we're offering, Meredith Fellows coming up in February. So let's keep scrolling down. And then we get into work about the assessment, about accessing information and resources. Let's keep scrolling down. How to use the commission website. There's so much in here, guys. This is going to be a great resource. It's almost going to be too much of a resource for you, but it really, truly will answer any question. And now for programs, how they can access their official materials, by going on the website, by using Ed Reports, Results Analyzer. Let's keep scrolling down. Different guides and tutorials, looks at sample submissions. Admittedly, our sample submissions are outdated. We do not have version 1 sample submissions yet. We are working on that though. How to understand candidate score data, how to, again, using Results Analyzer and their score reports. Let's keep scrolling down. And how to use that data to inform your program improvements. How to look at that data, rubric by rubric level. How are your candidates doing? Are they struggling in certain areas? For example, are they struggling when it comes to step 3 reflection? Is that an area that in our coursework that we need to help them improve on? Let's keep scrolling down. And I want to get to the timelines. We have some sample timelines in here. Oh, video permissions, edits, all of that is in here. So if you have any questions about that and what's allowable, it's all in here. Now, again, registration and scoring, the fees, how to request for alternative arrangements and accommodations. We get that question a lot. So all of those answers are here. Talks about the passing standard, the secondary passing standard, how are assessors qualified and what are the qualifications for that. Let's keep going down, 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 down. Again, there's so much in here. That's why Control F will be your best friend. Talks about voided results, retakes, things like that. Purchasing vouchers, which is an option to you as program that I personally think it's a great option to purchase pre-purchase those vouchers for candidates, so that they can so that you can all go through registration together. I know, like Sylvia mentioned, she has her candidates do that together as well, but that's also a great way to just maybe work in that fee in another way so that it's prepaid for them and they can just put in their voucher code. All right, let's keep going down. It's lots of a whole chapter on vouchers. How to support candidates. And let's keep scrolling down because we're going to talk about timelines. Here we go. So we have a suggested timeline. We use this in the field test. It got great results. Again, this is just a suggestion. This is not what we are telling you to do. This just breaks out the math cycle into, I believe, an 8-week timeline. That might be more or less than what your program uses. But again, this is just one way that you could take it and tweak it and make it your own for your program. Or if you have candidates who have already left out of coursework and they're working in a classroom on a short-term staffing permit, but they still need to do their CalTPA. This is something that you could also share with them as a way to like support them and help them figure out that timeline. Okay, let's scroll down because now we're going to look at a suggested timeline for the literacy cycle. So again, this breaks out all of the different tasks. We just went through week by week and gave some suggested ideas about how to embed it and how to just keep the work moving, in a timely way, in that perky pace. The next one is, I believe, cycle 1. Is it single subject? There it is, cycle 1 for single subject and world language folks. So we again have a very similar suggested timeline, and then after that is cycle 2. So now we got past all of the big universal stuff, and now we're going to get into chapters. So let's keep going down because we're running low on time. Let's get to our first chapter, which is about understanding the math cycle. Oh, here's a good chapter for understanding rubrics. Let's keep going. And the next one, I believe, is, yep, these are all in the guide. We've got new videos. General planning. So if you've got some, they're in a combo class, they're a bilingual candidate, they're in a co-teaching situation. These are just kind of those general planning considerations that we can give you guidance on. All right, let's keep scrolling down. Understanding the math cycle. So this is that big picture overview for all of the credential areas. And after this chapter, it's understanding the literacy cycle. So very similar, just big picture about understanding those two assessments. Yep, keep going. And the chapter after this is specifically for ed specialists. You can see how much is in here, and I apologize for the scrolling. I know it's a lot. So right after ed specialist considerations. So for our 5 SPED areas that are doing the CalTPA, this is for you. It talks about core content connectors and keep going down, and use of grade level standards, other developmental considerations, facilitating instructional support personnel, and things like that. So there's a lot in here, as you can see. It's a little overwhelming. Keep going down. All right, let's get past all these tables. And the next chapter, right here. We start with the multiple subjects CalTPA. And we go through each one of the credential areas. So we start with multiple subjects first, and we have the math cycle, and then we break down the literacy cycle. And we follow that. You'll see all of the evidence table, the essential questions, and then under the essential questions, we have a little part about important concepts for faculty to share with candidates. So we just pulled out some little areas that we felt like were really important. Share this with your candidates. We don't want to see them fall down on this area. And so it goes through those chapters. So multiple subjects, math and literacy, and then it moves into PK3, math and literacy. Specific, yep, there's multiple subjects, literacy. And then we move into PK3. There's PK3. And we go through math and literacy. And after this, we go through the 5 ed sped areas. So we start with the mild, moderate, and the extensive support needs. We start with math, and then we go over the literacy cycle. So we also pull out kind of where ESN might be a little bit different because they're more alike than not. So we'll kind of pull out what's unique for each one. And we go through the math, we go through the literacy. Yep, there's literacy. All right. And then after this, we have our ECSC, I believe. Yep, there's our early childhood special education for math and for literacy. And after that, we have our DHH for math and literacy. And after that, our visual impairments, our VI for math and literacy. There it is. At the very end, we have our cycle 1 and cycle 2 for single subject and world language. So yep, there we go. So instructional cycle 1 will follow those SPED areas. And you'll see it's broken down for single subject and world language because there are some unique differences. So we go over cycle 1 first for those 2 credential areas. And as you scroll down, again, just pointing out it follows the same structure as before, where we have each of the 4 steps. We have the evidence table, the essential questions, and then those important concepts to share. And after cycle 1, we have cycle 2 for single subject and world language. And same thing, we go through for each of those 2 credentials, and we break it down by the 4 steps. And at the very end, we have our glossary. So again, we're all using those common terms. This is almost 200 pages, so you'll see Control F will be your best friend. For example, if you did a Control F for foundational reading skills, because that's where you want to look. So let's do that. Control F, foundational reading skills. And it will take you to, I think it's like 22 different instances where it's mentioned throughout the guide. And you can quickly go through and skim and find what you need. And so that will be your best friend. So this will be going out next week. We're really excited about it because this is going to be publicly available. This is not going to be password protected. So share it far and wide with other faculty members as well. Have candidates reference it as well. It's a public open document, and we really hope that you will utilize it. All right, I'll kick it back to you, Marissa.
Sure. Sorry, it took a second for me to get my camera going again. And I know that there are some questions about folks wanting the watermark draft of this. The real full draft with all the correct links and everything in it is going to be available, I believe, by about this time next week. And so we didn't want to put the watermark draft out there when the real one was going to come out and be just much more accessible for folks. But we did want to show you what it was and how great of a resource it absolutely is and will be, and it will be housed publicly, just a link on the website, so no password, nothing needed for it. And so yeah, like I said, it's tough when it's coming out so quickly, but we had this webinar scheduled, so we wanted to make sure we honored time and calendars, but also provided that information. But to wrap us up, let's go ahead and take a look at some upcoming program supports and contact information. We did shift our office hours, and we are having program office hours first and third Fridays from 9 to 10 a.m. Show up for EdSped, multiple subjects, PK3, APA, anything at the same time. We're all there to answer your questions first and third Fridays. Candidate office hours for CalTPA and CalAPA on Wednesdays from 4:15 to 5 o'clock. You can send candidates our way any Wednesday of the year. And if we do have any cancellations, like with conferences and such, we will make sure that we send that out. We are having our leadership PLCs next starting tomorrow, and we're going to take down a list of topics that you all want to have conversations about. Maybe get some guest speakers in there, create some splinter groups amongst you all, but we wanted just to create a space for folks to come together and share best practices and build some community. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So again, we are going to be emailing out this slide deck as a PDF after today's presentation. Hopefully, we can have the link to this recording embedded in here after we're done, but we'll also be advertising it in the PSD. And then we do have some other digging deeper sessions for the remainder of the year scheduled, so you can get your calendar and register and mark them off. Okay, we can go to the next slide. The Meredith Fellows Implementation Conference. That is all coming up in February. We typically have had this in the fall, but given the shifts and changes of this year, we pushed to the spring so we can hear from your programs and absolutely the most awesome things that you all do. It's coming up February 5th and 6th. It will be on Zoom, hosted by the CTC. So be on the lookout for I believe the call for presenters went out this past Friday. So if you are interested in presenting,
I'm going to put it in the chat too.
Okay, perfect. All right, let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Keep your program contact information up to date with the ADS and making sure that the folks who should be receiving materials are. Also, we do have a results analyzer presentation coming up in the beginning of November. So for those of you that are like, where is my data housed and how can I take a look at that? We will be sending out information about that training, and I believe they will also be presenting at CCAC. So CalAPA, they're slightly different assessment timelines for submission and receiving your assessment results. But if you submit your cycle by this date, you will receive your results on the corresponding date. So let's take a look at the next slide. There's more submission windows for CalTPA. And again, submit by this date, get your results by the next date. All right. We do have our listserv. Some of you received a reminder about this meeting via our listserv. Please share the listserv. Anybody can sign up, and because they want to receive more emails. So absolutely, it's better to sign up for stuff and hear about it 3 times and not hear about it at all. So you can sign up for any one of our listservs and receive our emails. And thank you so very much for attending and for your active participation. If you have any policy questions about the Cal TPA or Cal APA, I have a question about this. But if you have the Cal TPA, EdSped, Cal TPA, and Cal APA emails are great to email. But if you have a technical question, like my candidate registered there or created their Pearson their Pearson login with an old email address and they have no longer access to that. Technical questions, we often forward them over to those ES email addresses, or they can be given directly to candidates so they can get some support. But as always, our websites have pretty every single link, with the exception of that program guide, which will be there next week, is all on our website. So we wanted to just showcase some of the things that we have available to support folks. But thank you so very much for your attention and participation today. And we hope you have a great rest of your afternoon.
Thank you, everyone. So great.
See you tomorrow.